Welcome to Beat Diabetes. I wanted to share a few more testimonies from our latest challenge. We called it the Fall 2022 Challenge, and we concluded it on December the 26th. That's when I asked people to get an A1C, preferably to do your own A1C, test yourself 5 times throughout the day at different random times, so that you could see where you are right now. Because if you get a lab A1C, it's going to go all the way back to 3 or 4 months ago, and it won't really reflect where you are right now. So anyway, the testimonies have been coming in. The reality is they've been coming in practically after we started a few weeks in. So, I mean, by the end of September, I was already hearing from people that were seeing wonderful results. And October, more testimonies, November, more testimonies, and they're still coming in. So I'm going to share a few testimonies. Then I'm going to answer the question, why? Why does this challenge work so well? What is it about this challenge that seems to give people victory where they don't seem to get it any other way? So we're going to answer that question. But first, 3 quick testimonies. This one is from actually a man we know. His name is Tom, and I have interviewed him, I think actually twice, about his victory. So he was already below the diabetic numbers for sure, quite well below them. But he still wanted to be part of the challenge and improve himself even more. So here's what he writes. Here are my results for my 5 tests on the 26th, as you requested. Fasting was 99, an hour after breakfast, 99, and 1 hour before late lunch, 97, 1 hour before late dinner, 97. He says, I ate 3 meals, no snacks. So he didn't quite follow the guidelines. He has 3 meals. Tom is on the slim side, so that may well be why he does that. And then he said, before bed, 95. Very consistent pattern, an average of 97.4 for all 5 tests. This calculates to an A1C of 502 using the Nathan formula, which he says Dr. Bernstein does not like, by the way. And yeah, I know Dr. Bernstein has his own ideas about which formula to use. They're not too far different, but there is some difference. But he says using a different formula, the one favored by Dr. Bernstein, his A1C would be 4.90, so even better still. Either way, he says, I'm satisfied. It appears that I'm overcoming the previous period last year where I had some autoimmune issues, which are disappearing at a fairly good pace. So he's excited. He's happy. And even though he was not in bad shape before, he's doing better still. All right, here is from a man who says, I want to thank you, Dennis and Benedicta, for your 4-month challenge. Gave me a kick in the rear to get motivated and take control of my diabetes. I've lost 25 pounds and 4 inches around my waist. Wow, that's pretty significant. My A1C is down from 8.0 to an estimated 6.2 over 4 months, and under 6.0 with my daily averages most days. So when you go from 8 to the low 6s or around 6, you've made significant progress. My in-range blood glucose is 97% of the time with only 3% high spikes. Wow, not spiking much at all. I've reduced my long-term insulin nearly 80%, so still taking a little insulin, but not much, and it's only the long term. He said, I thought Thanksgiving and Christmas gatherings would be difficult. They were not. I like to hear that. I explained the challenge. I brought my own sides and ate the meat served. Well, that's an interesting way of doing it. So he went elsewhere, to some other household than his own. And he said, well, I can't control what kind of sides they're going to provide. I'll bring my own sides and I'll just eat the meat. So it worked for him. And he said, that wasn't hard. My goal is to lose another 70 pounds, get off the insulin, maintain this lifestyle the rest of my life. I have become a Beat Diabetes evangelist and promote this lifestyle to all diabetics. I know I'm 74. If I can do it, anyone can. Well, that is awesome. And you can reading these testimonies, not only do you get to know the facts they present, but you can literally feel the enthusiasm in the lines that they write, the sentences, the phrases, and so forth. Wonderful. Here is a lady who says, my A1C on December 26 was 5.2. I'm in the fives club. Thank you for all of the work you put in to help people beat diabetes. I started with an A1C of 12 in May. Wow, 12. 12 is really high, folks. Very, very high, dangerously high. She went from 12 in May down to 5.2 by December 26. Did she beat diabetes? I'd say she did. She says, I found out I had diabetic retinopathy at a regular eye exam. I'd been diagnosed with diabetes in 2016. Tried the recommended SAD diet, but my numbers didn't budge. I assume she's talking about what a lot of nutritionists would say, which is basically eat healthier carbs. You don't have to stop the carbs. You don't have to lower the carbs. Just eat healthier carbs. It doesn't work. And she says, my numbers didn't budge. I was always hungry. I asked the nutritionist about low carb. She frowned, said it wasn't a good idea. Metformin made me too sick and too tired to function. I couldn't afford the Victoza injectable I was prescribed. I lost hope and gave up. I became increasingly fatigued over the years. For the last couple of years, I battled constant yeast infection. I'd begun watching Dr. Fung videos a week or two before my retinopathy diagnosis. I started low-carb and fasting. I quickly discovered your YouTube videos, and all of the success stories were a huge help. Within weeks of faithfully following low-carb and time-restricted eating, the yeast infection disappeared. My feet and legs stopped hurting. Wonderful. I started sleeping better, partly due to not having to make multiple bathroom visits every night. My energy gradually returned. I love the food I eat now, and I always love to hear that. She's not saying, oh, I'm so miserable eating this terrible food. No, I love the food I eat now. You can find meals that you will enjoy, my friend. You don't have to suffer that much. Sure, you got to give up some things. But there are so many replacements and so many good meals. If you'll just do a little research and check out some of these YouTube diet videos about low carb and keto, you're not going to suffer much. And I sure don't. So anyway, she says, I love the food I eat now. I don't miss the junk most of the time. She does have one negative here. She says, my retinopathy is still progressing. I pray it'll stop getting worse and maybe someday even get better. Well, we hear about that frequently. Obviously, there are no guarantees, but she's already had significant progress, not only with her blood sugar going down, but her the pain in her legs and feet. And what else was it? Just she had a yeast infection go away, just several things. So she's doing much better in everything except the retinopathy, and she's hoping that will go away, and may God help her to see that victory in her life there as well as in all these other areas. So for the rest of the time on this video, I want to answer a simple question, and that is, why do these challenges work so well? Now, some of you are saying, well, yeah, I understand why they work well. You're recommending low-carb eating. You recommended time-restricted eating. You're telling people not to snack. That would work. Yeah, that's true. But here's the thing. I talk about that in all my normal videos. Why do they need a challenge? People just love these challenges. And oftentimes they'll get off one challenge and say, when are you going to do your next challenge? I want to be part of that. And they're just practically begging for these challenges, and we're seeing tremendous results. And oftentimes, here's the interesting thing to me, oftentimes they've been watching my videos for years and never really made the commitment to do all that they knew they needed to do. And then they get involved in a challenge and bam, here it goes. And then they see real progress. So I find that a little bit puzzling, but I think I can share some light on that. Again, the question is, why do these work so well? Even in cases where people have been watching my videos for a year, 2 years, 3 years, but they haven't quite made the commitment to make the changes they know they need to make. But then they get involved in a challenge and they make that commitment, and it works, and they find their glucose levels going down and certain complications going away, and just everything improving, or most things improving. Why did it take the challenge to do that? Why couldn't they have just figured it out from watching my normal Tuesday and Friday videos? Well, I'm going to have to do something, going to annoy some of you, so I'm warning you in advance. I want to share a Bible passage that has a principle in it. And even though you may not be religious, you may not be a Christian, if you will just hang in there and hold on and don't touch that dial, as they used to say, you'll see what I'm talking about here. This is actually from the book of Acts with the Apostle Paul, who preached Jesus Christ not only as a Savior, but as a healer. And he had a healing ministry, and people got healed through his ministry. So it says in Acts 14, verse 8, in Lystra, a certain man who had no strength in his feet was sitting, a cripple from his mother's womb, had never walked, it says. This man heard Paul speaking. Paul, observing him intently and seeing that he had faith to be healed, and I'm going to stop there, and I want to just I want to ask you a question. It says, Paul observed him intently. In other words, looked him right in the eyes, and it says he saw this man, lame man, could not walk. He saw he had faith to be healed. Now, he's sitting there on the floor, presumably, and Paul's looking at him and sees that he has faith to be healed. But he's not healed. He's on the floor. He's still lame. Paul looks into his eyes and sees he has faith to be healed, but he's not healed. Why not? If he's got faith to be healed, surely that's all it would take according to the Bible, right? By faith we receive. Paul looks at him, sees that he has faith to be healed, but he's not healed. And then Paul said with a loud voice, "Stand up straight on your feet." And the Bible says he leaped and walked. He was healed. But it took one other thing besides the faith to be healed. Paul's looking at him. Paul's preaching, talking about Jesus as the Savior, as the healer, looks into the eyes of this man who had never walked one step in his entire life, been lame all his life. And he sees faith in the man's eyes. I don't know if he was smiling or excited or what, enthusiastic with what Paul was saying, but Paul says, this guy's got faith. But he wasn't healed until Paul said, "Stand up on your feet." And then bam, here comes the miracle. And the man gets up on his feet, leaps and walks. He had faith to be healed, but it took one other thing. Paul had to tell him, get up off the ground and walk. Now, sometimes we can have faith for something, or we can have enthusiasm for something. We can be excited about something, but we're still not quite ready to make the commitment. And I think that describes some of the people who watch my videos, Dr. Fung's videos, other people's videos about the low-carb lifestyle. And it's like they say, you know what? I think that works. I think he's got something. How else can you explain why people would watch my video for a year, 2 years, my videos for a year or 2 years, and yet they don't quite make the commitment, but they keep watching. It's like they've got faith that says, you know what? I think he's right. I think this old preacher, I think this guy is right. But they can't quite start the process. There's a law called the law of inertia, which means it's very hard to get something started. Once you get it started, you can usually keep it going, but it's difficult to get it started. And a lot of people watch my videos, they get excited. You might say they've got faith to be healed. They've got faith to see to see things happen, but they're inert. The law of inertia is holding them down, holding them and pushing them and keeping them from making progress. But these challenges, it's kind of like Paul saying, get up on your feet. It's like me saying, hey, why don't you start? You've got faith to be healed. You've got faith that says, I think this will work. I think it could work for me. That's great. Faith is wonderful. But sometimes you need somebody like me to say, why don't you just start? Stand up. And when these people start this challenge, it's like, all right, on September 1 or February 1, the beginning of this year, or the beginning of last year, rather, suddenly it was like, I got to start now. I've been watching Dennis for years, and I really like what he has to say. I hear the testimonies. I hear about all these victories. I really believe this can work for me, but you haven't yet started. So these challenges as to why they work, it's kind of like something to move you off the ground and get you on your feet, get you moving. It's like on February 1, and by the way, we're having a new challenge on February 1, the Lord willing, of this year, 2023. And that will involve a menu, diet. It will involve getting texts, emails from me, rather, and all the stuff that we do in this challenge. I'll explain more to it as time goes on. And all you have to do to get involved in this challenge is there's no cost. I don't charge for this at all. But all you have to do is send me an email, grace@spiritofgrace.org, and write "Count Me In" on the subject line. The email address is grace@spiritofgrace.org. And write "Count Me In" on the subject line. You don't have to say anything else, and I'll put you on the list, on the database. So sometimes the greatest problem is not a lack of knowledge. You know what you need to do. Many of you do. You haven't done it yet, but you know what you need to do. You've got faith to be healed, you might say, but you haven't quite made the commitment to go full scale, whole hog all the way. Maybe you've dabbled a little bit and you've dipped your toe in the waters and you've tried cutting back on this or that, but you haven't gone the whole way. And what I'm saying is get into this next challenge. And you don't even have to wait, but this challenge will help you get started. And do the whole thing. Give yourself 4 months and see what will happen when you do these things you know you need to do. So the testimonies continue to come in. We thank God for them. We give God the glory. And we are happy to see people of all kinds of beliefs and religions, and some with no belief or no religion at all. We're happy that God will heal you too. Even though you don't believe in Him, He believes in you. You don't love Him, but He loves you. And we're happy to see people find victory every possible way. God bless. We will see you again soon. Benedict and I would like to invite you to study the Bible with us through our podcast. Join us in our home as we do our morning Bible studies. With a podcast, there's nothing to see. You just listen. And that means you can enjoy our Bible study while you drive in your car, go for a walk, or work out at the gym. Our podcast is called Discover the Word with Den and Ben, and you can find it in most platforms where you get your podcasts. And if you know nothing at all about podcasts and how they work, there's a link in the description that will help get you started.